did
You
last
probably
night.
sit up, but you ain't watching, you're probably sawing logs.
Now Fox News, the guy that heads it up is sexual harassment.
Only thing are the flies.
That old guy.
Not you
Tails.
can't hardly move. When you start looking at the gals on there, I can see
See
where
why?
a person might be tempted.
Then of course I walked through poison ivy.
Carlson fired her. And
Of course,
Retaliate and all that.
they were
Well,
the
they're both on them yet. One is that blonde gal.
one painter. It was a father and son, and the son said to him, he said, you know, he said, there's all
The
kinds.
other one was just lately, and she's alone. They got credentials. They aren't just good.
That don't mean.
let me tell you, yeah. I've been through law school. That doesn't mean anything.
You know, are you going to spray it? And he said,
In the front door and out the back, Mike?
bother me.
Yeah.
Nice.
One that,
That's real
I
nice.
think the one that,
Don't worry about
Ours
me
is
now.
whatever
Don't worry about me.
America.
No, they put down tarps. They put down tarps. He is that original.
Mind your way.
I have a brother-in-law. I mean, it's not like
Thought you came through here once.
Yeah.
Yeah, he went around here just so he could
So
come through that way. He saw you moving back there. Hey, Larry, you gotta break this up.
So,
Oh, he's racing, I think. I think Mark is racing.
Yeah.
hotter tomorrow.
don't bottle up some of the heat that's coming Thursday and Friday. It's at 95, 90,
Nobody's here.
humid as all hell.
Okay. I won't get disturbed when I sleep.
No, I ain't gonna say what I was gonna, but the crops really look good. We don't need any bad weather.
It's very harsh, but I might use that just.
Wind or hail, boy, that'd just,
I don't know, it changes.
Go into Winnebago County, and man,
oh,
Yeah, I was noticing.
some
wet.
is only 2 feet high.
too wet, I bet.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it just depends.
Well, the correction's right down here.
Yeah.
It's in bold print right down here. Had to replant quite a bit of it down there.
You'd be surprised, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's partly why you get see the.
In that soil.
I have no idea. I'm not on that.
It does.
Oh, you got four. You got four. You got
That's
four.
why we have him.
I remember four county board members. 3 years ago, we had rain and everything.
Something about his hearings.
This guy that I knew down there
When it,
planted 3
Time wasn't really paying attention.
I have no idea.
Come up pretty soon. Probably I could care.
You're rough.
He's still on the council.
Put a tarp on it or something.
being an egg again.
No?
That's why we moved him to the front.
Yeah, look at you up in the front row.
What's happening tomorrow? Where's that?
Mark's not coming tonight? No.
Yeah, don't rile him up. I have to sit next to him, okay?
Where it was leaking or no?
Yeah, I know, right?
Oh, just gotta put something, have somebody put something.
Witness, she threatened me.
No, I was nearly handing it to Ruth, so she could threaten
So
you.
I had it right on his back.
I was nearly handing it to you so you could threaten me.
Lid on his feet.
Is this?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, balls.
Yeah, that's the
Was
only
that
one.
just jarred everything?
Okay, let's call this meeting to order. All right, Mel will do roll call, please.
Mrs. Krantz? Mr. Heisey?
Here.
Mr. Tim?
Here.
Mr. Cap?
Here.
Mr. Eckstein?
Here.
Mr. Buddy?
Here.
Mrs. Plata?
Here.
Mr. King?
Here.
Mr. Wadel?
Here,
Mr. Rothermel?
Here.
And Mark Kirschner is excused.
All right, we'll stand for silent prayer and pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Cap, second by Waito. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approval of minutes of the June 21st, 2016 meeting.
Move to approve.
Motion by Weddy, second by Raffenel. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Next, we have public comments, and we have one person who signed up, and that would be Deb Behringer.
Oh, okay, thank you. A couple weeks ago, you would have received either an email or a paper survey from Schenck and Associates. We're doing an evaluation of how we deliver our financials and accounting. I know we've received 2 back, so thank you very much. But if you have not filled those out, would you please do so and get those back to me? So most of you would have gotten it through an email, but a couple of you that don't have email will have gotten a paper copy. If you haven't seen it in the mail, please let me know. If you haven't seen the email, let me know, and I will get that information to you.
How do you know if you got it? Because I filled it out, but you might not.
You
have-
did.
Oh, you
I
got
know.
it?
I know. Mr. Cap and Mr. Waddle have completed theirs, so thank you very much. You're off the hook, Bob. You're off the hook, Bob.
You resend it?
Don't let Donna hear that, or she'll be pushing for those iPads yet tonight.
You deleted yours? Okay. All right.
A way to go.
Did the dog eat your homework? Is that what you're kind of telling me? Okay, all right. Okay, so if anybody else needs it, let me know, please. But thank you. That's all I have.
All right, thank you very much. All right, unfinished business, we have discussion and possible motion action item, updates to the rules and bylaws of Waushara County Board of Supervisors. Ruth.
So the last time you were here, there was just some changes to some very specific sections that had been requested by different departments. And then I requested that you table it so that I could go through and make everything consistent. I think that I did that, but there is a sheet on your table. There is one more change related to the library services committee. Thank you, Mr. Tim, for catching that. The old language was municipalities not served by libraries, and it's changed to where a library is not physically located. So all municipalities are served by libraries, there's just not a library in every township. So other than that, I think that unless anybody has any questions about any of the changes, I think it's mostly making things consistent and the way that we are doing things at this time.
Russ.
On page 8, section D, paragraph 3, I think on the first sentence there needs to be a couple words that should end the sentence with available and delete to the.
I'm sorry, page 8,
Section
section,
D,
okay,
paragraph 3,
okay.
first sentence, you deleted public and the county board members. I think the 2 words to the should also be deleted.
Oh, I think public was not supposed to be.
Yeah.
That was too long. I went too far.
Oh,
That, the notice needs to include notice to the public that it's not on the courthouse.
so you don't want to delete the word
I
public
don't
then?
want to delete the word public. I think I got happy with my cross outs.
Okay, okay.
It doesn't make sense.
Anything else? We need a motion to approve. Yes. Motion by Everett,
A second.
second by Dennis. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, next we have consideration and possible action on the following ordinance. Ordinance number 5978, ordinance amending Waushara County zoning maps pursuant to the authority granted in Chapter 58 Waushara County Code Zone Change. George and Karen Edgren, Town of Springwater.
So basically, when we presented this to you last month, there were
by Bernadette. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. New business, report presentation, budget process overview, and office annual report, County Clerk Melanie Stake.
Do you mind if I stay here, or do you want me to go?
Yeah.
And actually, you're only going to get the county budgeting process. As I timed the presentation, it's plenty long enough all by itself, so I'll do my annual report some other time. And I already have the kind of warmth of the room and the dryness of the subject against me, so I don't want to press my luck here. So we're just going to go over some of the budget procedures for the county, which might be review for most of you, but never hurts to brush up, I guess. So you go next. So the main points of the presentation, just a general budgeting overview, why we budget, a little bit about how the process works, the timeline of events that we try to follow when we're going through the many months of budget preparations, and the roles and responsibilities of all the many people involved, including my office, the other departments of the county, and of course you and your committees and as the full board. So just the budgeting overview section. So at the most basic level, I guess, the budget determines how much the county has to charge or levy in property taxes to provide the desired services that our taxpayers want and the board decides to offer. So for the 2016 budget numbers, for example, they're below. We anticipated that we were going to spend about $38,736,051. And we were going to bring in revenues of only $22,627,000, which leaves that gap of a little over $16 million that we have to ask the taxpayers to finance our operations. So those anticipated revenues in the $22 million range are things like fines and forfeitures, state aid, other charges for services, that kind of thing. And some other purposes of the budget, it's probably one of the more important documents we have to follow for the county. It's an accounting document. It obviously provides the expectations for departments for revenues and expenditures through the year, and it's kind of a benchmark showing them, you know, where they should feasibly be at mid-year or at any given month. Just kind of good to keep an eye on things that way. It's a management tool. It authorizes who can spend how much and on what. It helps guide staff and the board on making decisions based on what kind of funding we have available. You know, can we offer this new program, or can we make this purchase? Well, let's see if the funding's in the budget. Maybe we'll have to wait till next year, those kinds of things. And it also communicates to the public what the county's priorities are and how their money is being spent. So you can't talk about, and if you ever have any questions or comments, please interrupt throughout. I'm not always good about stopping and taking a breath and asking for that. So you can't talk about budget without talking about levy limits, which have been in effect, I believe, more than a decade now, if some of the people who've been here longer than I have. And it's covered in section 66.0602 of the statutes. And it basically says in that statute that our levy can only go up from one year to the next, either not at all or the percent change in equalized value from new construction. And unfortunately, especially in recent years, we're not seeing a lot of new construction. Over the last 4 years, the average has been less than 1%, about 0.67%. Last year's new construction figure was 0.64. So what that means is really we're held basically to zero. That amounts to very little new money that we can levy. And those figures should be available from the Wisconsin Department of Revenue for next year's budgeting purposes in the next 3 to 4 weeks. And that's just an example of what that document looks like that we get from the state, just for your reference there. And in order to determine how much we can go, how much we can levy, my office has to fill out a levy limit worksheet. Unfortunately, it's usually not available until sometime in September. So we're already well into the budget season by that time. So just for our purposes here, just number 6 there, you can see that net new construction percentage is in there. And then where I have the arrow, that's the amount we can levy. Now, you're probably looking at that, and if you were paying attention, you would have noticed that it's $14 million, and we actually levied $16 million. So how did we do that? Well, there are, as you, I'm sure know, there are adjustments that you can make to the levy or exceptions to the levy limit, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. So our EMS and library budgets are excluded from the levy limit. You can go above the levy by those amounts. So in EMS, that was a little over $1 million, and Winnifox, and I'm talking 2016 here, was $479,055. So we could increase our levy over and above the levy limit by those amounts. We also have some debt that we can adjust or increase our levy by the amount of our debt payment in a given year. We bonded several years ago, $7.25 million, I think it was, and so our payments are exempt from the levy limit. So in 2017, that amount is $861,000, and we can increase our levy by that amount. For instance, for the 2016 budget, we could have levied up over and above our levy up to $850,000 some dollars, but we only ended up actually using a little less than half of that. So, and this is just a little snapshot at the end of a spreadsheet that I use to track where we're at, and I kind of work backwards. I don't know if it makes sense to you or not, but that's how I keep track of it. So I keep track of how much the departments are requesting in levy, and that's that total of $16,109,008. I take EMS and Winnifox off of that amount since that's exempt from those limits. And then we came up with that total request of $14,538,000 some. But we're still above the levy limit, luckily, which is that 14 million figure with the arrow next to it. Fortunately, I should say, we have that debt payment that we can use to our advantage. So we were okay by going over the levy limit by $373,000 because we had that $800 and some thousand debt payment as well. That was exempt from the levy limit. Any questions? It sounds kind of like I'm rambling here. And of course, everybody likes to talk about the mill rate. Mill means 1,000th, and the mill rate is the amount of property taxes billed for each $1,000 in property values. It's calculated by taking your levy amount and dividing by property valuation. So for 2016, there's that calculation there, and it amounted basically to $6.70 per 1,000 of property value. So just for, comparison purposes, a $100,000 house, $670 in taxes. This is our mill rate history over the last several years. Since 2011, it's pretty much gone up every year except last year. We did go down 10 cents. The equalized values, you'll notice, decreased from 2011 until 2016 when they finally bumped back up. So hopefully we'll see that trend continue of increasing instead of decreasing, because that definitely helps with our mill rate. The budget's covered for counties of our size under Section 6590 of the statutes. It basically just says we have to formulate a budget annually and hold the public hearings regarding them, and we have to publish a budget summary as a Class 1 notice at least 15 days before the public hearing. Then it goes on to outline the many details of what has to be in that summary for the public. And our example is here. So it just is telling in general terms what our expenditures are for, where our revenues are coming from, what we're levying, how much our fund balance, how much cash money we have, and what their mill rate is and all that kind of good stuff. So any questions at all at this point? So our budget timeline, up until a few years ago, we kind of we didn't really set a clear schedule for budgets, and I think it's helpful to have that for our department, so the work comes in a little bit less sporadically. It's not all feast or famine. We have it coming in regularly, steady, and it also helps departments prioritize. They have so many responsibilities that kind of helps to know when things are expected of them, and makes the process, I think, more comfortable for everybody. So we're just going to go over some of those things. The first slide here is just our basic budget calendar. The county board provides guidelines, departments prepare budgets, public hearing notice, those kinds of things. On the next slide, and for several more slides, and I won't go over all this stuff, but there's way more that goes on behind the scenes at each of those steps. The green is all kind of behind the scenes stuff that the board doesn't see, that departments and my department are taking care of. We're developing the calendar, making changes to square footage, and determining maintenance charges, reminding departments that they should be talking to their committees if they're going to be adding staff or programs in the next year, that kind of thing. Finalizing our numbers for the previous year and for the first 6 months of the current year so that we can provide departments and committees with the most up-to-date figures for which to make their next year's budget decisions. So we also have to do a lot in our accounting software. It's kind of a tedious process where we're importing and exporting information from and to Excel from our financial and to our financial software, and we have to do that for 37 different departments and areas, so that can get a bit tedious. July into August, the departments are working on those budgets and returning them to our office and the county clerk's office. And as those come in, we have time only to quickly review them and format them into a way that we can import them into our financial software and make sure that we've captured everything. Then we get them to you at your home committees for review, those budget documents. You're looking at those in August, as you know, and making any changes you deem necessary at that time. And meanwhile, our office has tons of information that's flying at us from the state, from departments, all these pieces of the puzzle that we need to calculate out the budget and eventually the apportionment. So again, and I won't go through this every time, but when the budgets come back from you and have your changes at the home committee level, we're importing that into the system again and making calculations, updating a spreadsheet that gives you an overall outlook of how we're doing with the budget, and preparing copies for you for your special meeting at the end of September. And then you have that special late September meeting to look at all the department's requests. So after that meeting, we're again importing information into Springbrook, our accounting software, and getting more information compiled for the website so the public can see our full budget and you can have our full budget before the November public hearing. And we're also preparing that public hearing notice you saw a few slides earlier that has to pull in a lot of figures from different areas of our system. And then we're publishing the public hearing notice the third week in October. So we're almost done. Second Tuesday in November, you hold your public hearing and approve the budget. We're a little unique in that we have our public hearing and approve the budget during the same meeting. A lot of other counties have it a week or two, have their hearing a week or two before the meeting where they approve the budget, just in case there are any changes at that point. So after you approve the budget, we're again importing all the information. We're filling out paperwork for the state, and we have to get all the apportionment calculations done within a matter of just a couple days for the 26 municipalities, and they're always chomping at the bit for that information. They expect it immediately after you pass the budget because they need to get their work done. So just to give you an idea of what goes into calculating the apportionment, here's our Excel document that's breaking that all out, determining what each municipality's portion of the levy is. And this is just the cover sheet of the apportionment report that we file with the state. We also have to complete one for all the 26 municipalities. So, roles and responsibilities, because it takes a lot of people to put this all together, including you. Our office, I'm not going to go into detail because you got all kinds of detail in those previous slides, but just an overall look, we're providing you comparison information as your finance department to make sure You have the most accurate previous year and current year-to-date figures to make budget decisions with. And we have to keep the process going. We're scheduling, we're setting deadlines, we're exporting and importing those pesky figures between Excel and our financial software. We're compiling massive amounts of information and trying to give you an overall broad outlook of where we're at. And ultimately, we're responsible for the apportionment. Nearby county, a few years ago, the clerk missed a calculation on the apportionment, and she lost the next election, I hear, mostly because of that. So that's, if we get a little testy about deadlines and needing time to review things, that's why, because there's a lot riding on those figures being accurate. So departments, they're supposed to be keeping their appropriate committees in the loop about their major changes that they're looking at for the next budget year, evaluating their programs and fees and recommending changes, analyzing their revenues and expenditures so that they can come up with educated figures for their next year's budget, and provide their committees the most honest budget they can, no padding. Not that anybody does that, but I think there's a fear of ever reducing your budget because in how things are with levy limits and such today, it's unlikely you'll ever get that money back. And of course, Deb's office has to provide calculations for wage and benefit information. They also compile all of the department's data processing needs and calculate those costs so that they can be charged to departments annually in the budget. So we've got home committees. You should be looking at the budgets, obviously, carefully, and asking the tough questions. You are in the best position at the home committee level to know what goes into the programs and basically what questions to ask. You're most familiar with those departments. Some samples of questions that could be asked: is the program required? Is it sustainable? How much levy does it cost to run? What are other counties of our size doing? And if, you know, they're consistently over budgeting on a certain line item, they're never spending anywhere near the amount they're budgeting, you know, why is that happening? Those kinds of things. Kind of like being a little investigator. Recommending programs and fee changes if you think it's necessary. And when we get to a full county board setting, again, you're the expert on those budgets that you oversee, those departments and budgets. And of course, as a county board, you set the directives for the budget, next budget year. And again, you're also looking at the budgets and analyzing them and asking questions. And you're representing the entire county, not just your district or departments in your home committees. You know, the county has priorities overall that need to be looked at. And of course, we, as you know, we have limited dollars, lots of services, and even more on the wish list always. So. And then I don't want to be accused of being Melania Trump. I don't know if everybody saw that. So I have my references here. I didn't take anything word for word from the statutes or WCA's county budgeting PowerPoint, but I did reference those documents when preparing this. So that's all I have. I know that was fascinating, so thank you for your attention.
Does anyone have any questions of Mel?
That's what happens when you don't have a presentation scheduled for the agenda. You get stuck with me.
Yeah, I like that.
Thank you.
Sure you don't have any questions?
And if you do at any point, let us know.
Give her a- Thank you, Mel.
Sure.
Okay, next we have discussion of possible motion action items scheduling Department 2017 budget hearings. Now this is our special meeting that we have in September. We normally do it on the second Tuesday. Dennis Everett and I will be at the WCA conference
it's the last Wednesday of the month. Pat and I got cap services.
Thursday, the 29th.
How about we just do it on your regular board meeting on the 20th and not have any other business?
Works for me. Does that give you enough time?
Sure.
It does? So does that work for everyone? We'll have that on the 20th, which is our regular board meeting night, and then we won't have anything else, unless there's an emergency, of course. Then we can take care of that and then do our budget hearing. Does that work? All right. Oh, you snuck in. Okay.
At the same time, but not earlier? At 7?
7.
Just make it be longer.
Yeah, maybe a little bit longer. I don't know if it can be longer, but let us try.
There won't be any other reports scheduled that night, will there?
No.
Make sure they get.
That's what I meant,
If we have any business that we have to do,
obviously,
we'll do that, but then,
obviously.
the bulk of the meeting will be on the budget. Very good. Consideration of possible action on the following resolutions and ordinance.
Resolution number 18-7-16, resolution amending resolution numbers 14-5-16 and 14-516A, authorizing the transfer of up to $188,656 from the general fund surplus for the camera project.
Yes.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Waddell,
Second.
second by Cap. Do you have any questions? Yes, Everett.
Can you review shortly what all the cameras are for? Are they all in jail or some here?
Most of them are in jail, and then there are 3 at the Marion Annex.
One of the reasons we're redoing the cameras in the jail is to be PREA compliant.
Yes.
So, that was how we got started on this, and then as long as we're doing the project, the 3 were added from the North Annex.
And the reason for the amendment is we actually budgeted more money last year than what we had acknowledged in the last resolution, so we need less money. Good news, yay.
Okay, very good. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any other questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign.
Resolution number 19-7-16, regarding human services economic support services.
Motion to approve.
Okay, motion by Weddy, second by Bernadette. Any questions concerning this? What? Yes,
Mr. Cap?
Yes.
Mr. Eckstein?
Yes.
Mr. Weddy?
Yes.
Mrs. Plata?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Waddell?
Yes.
Mr. Rothermel?
Yes.
Mrs. Prince?
Yes.
Mr. Heisey?
Yes.
Mr. Terry?
Yes.
Okay. Resolution number 20-7-16, acknowledgement of Ellen Kieskla's service to and retirement from Washera County.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Weddy, second by Eckstein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign.
Resolution number 21-7-16, acknowledgement of Patty Miller's service to and retirement from Washera County.
Motion by Eckstein.
Second.
Second by Weddy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ordinance number 599, ordinance amending Washera County Code, Chapter 22, Article 3, smoking, to include prohibiting the use of e-cigarettes in county buildings.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second by Cap. Any questions about concerning this? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, board suggestions for future agenda items?
important, I guess, but I had mentioned something once about a photographer or picture of the county board for future people somewhere down the line that they say, yeah, I know that. Pardon? Well, sometime, I mean, because it's been a while since we've had one, I believe, and some of the members are no longer with us, and it's too bad that they didn't get recognized in a photograph on the wall of fame or shame or whatever you want to call it over there, so just a thought.
Work on that.
If we're going to do this, I'd like you to include that as a special note on the top of the agenda so everyone knows not to wear their bibs.
Exactly.
Yeah, Russell.
We're gonna wait until I lose weight, so the picture will probably be next August.
You can stand in back.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Bob.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Son's gonna love that.
Thank you.
Son's up from Texas, he's gotta go back tomorrow.
Sorry, there's more.
Dad, aren't you gonna be around tonight for the bonfire? Oh, yeah, probably, in the afternoon. It might, I can't help it. Yes, we do. Yeah.
What's that? Last time it was dinner 9 o'clock or after tonight, the wife will wonder what the hell I did last month. Where I stopped.
Yeah.
Mine always asks me that, where'd you stop tonight?
Yeah, so now you've got all kinds of time, Jerry.
We'll take a look at it.
Yeah, they haven't did that since I've got.
Postponed it.
I don't know when it ended, but. Why?
Like a doctor's notice kind of thing.
So but that was